Okay, let's get started, everyone. Good evening, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. My name is Anas Akbarali, and I'm an Education USA advisor at our Islamabad office. Thank you very much for joining our webinar today titled Overview of Knight-Hennessy Scholars Program at Stanford University with Stanford University. I would like to take a moment to thank Christian Tanja for taking the time out for us and leading this webinar. So Christian is the Senior Assistant Director of Admissions at the Knight-Hennessy Scholars, a multicultural and multidisciplinary fellowship program at Stanford University that offers 3 years of funding and leadership development, for its scholars. Before I hand it over to my colleague, I would like to take a moment to share a bit about who we are and what we're currently doing, not just in Pakistan, but worldwide. This is especially really important for those that are joining us for the first time today. So Education USA is a global network under the US Department of State comprising of over 425 international student advising centers. We are your official source of US higher education, and we provide you with accurate, current, and comprehensive information about studying in the US. In Pakistan, Education USA is based at the United States Education Foundation in Pakistan, which also hosts the Fulbright Commission in the country. USCP promotes mutual understanding between the people of Pakistan and the people of the United States through educational and cultural exchange with offices in Islamabad, Lahore, and Karachi. Other than advising, we also have a programs department that administers multiple fully funded programs, including the Fulbright Scholarship. You can find all of this information on our website, www.educationusa.pk and www.uscfp.org. And finally, along with the programs department, you can also come over here to take the GRE test, because USCFP also has authorized metric testing centers in Lahore, Karachi, and Islamabad. Now, without any further delay, I will now request my colleague, Christian, to begin his presentation. Just one small note before we begin our presentation. Unfortunately, we will not allow our participants to speak during the session. So instead of raising your hands, you can always use the Q&A chat box feature if you have any questions or comments. And once Christian is done with his presentation, I will be able to moderate the Q&A session, and we'll go through your questions one by one. Thank you very much, Christian, for joining and leading this webinar. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I will just stop sharing my screen now.
All right. Thank you so much, Anas, for your time. And thank you, Education USA, Pakistan, for hosting me. I'll go ahead and share my screen so that you all have it. I know you're all serious applicants, because what are you doing on a Friday night? You're listening about education opportunities. So I know that you're quite serious in your pursuits of higher education. So thanks so much for having me, and hopefully we'll cover a lot of ground in the next hour. I'm so excited to see so many people who are thinking about prospectively about thinking about their higher education opportunities. I hope that you're on this call because, one, you want more school. We are a graduate fellowship for graduate studies at Stanford University, so you know that you want to do more schooling. Hopefully you're also on this call because Stanford is on that list, because we are a scholarship program only for graduate studies at Stanford. And hopefully you're also on this call because you want to solve a really important and critical challenge, and you also recognize that you can't do it alone and that you need support along the way. And that is also why Knight-Hennessy Scholars was pulled together. And so on behalf of the Knight-Hennessy team, thank you and welcome, and we appreciate you joining us for this hour. My name is Christian Tanja. As Anas said, I am the Senior Assistant Director of Admission at Knight-Hennessy. April marked my 2-year anniversary of being on the team, and I've thoroughly enjoyed the journey thus far, and more importantly, believe deeply in the mission of what we're doing at Stanford. And so my hope is that I'll be able to shed some light on our program and the admission process today, and that will be helpful in your preparation and get you excited about what's to come. During these sessions, I just finished a whirlwind tour of talking to international students in South America. I invited a posture of patience and curiosity, because the road to applying to graduate school is a challenging one. It's one that you want to work smarter, not harder, where you're looking at many different options. And I'd like to share that I was able to continue on my education. I found the gift of New York because of a rejection letter from Stanford University. And so because of that, you can find whatever is meant for you as long as you keep on going. And so let me go ahead and dive into our presentation today. So for those who might be learning for this is the first time, I'll present the program in a broad overview. And for those who are joining again, I'll try to weave in some extra insights in my journey of being here on the admissions team at Knight-Hennessy. So thanks for again being here. We love asking questions at Knight-Hennessy, and so I'll spend the next few minutes sharing a little bit about the program through these questions. Why do we exist? Who we are, what we do, where and how we do it, and then I'll spend a few minutes talking about the admission process and then how you can join us. And then for those who will remain on the call, we'll dedicate the rest of our time to a live Q&A. And as a reminder, because we weren't able to hear your voices directly, please use the Q&A function when asking your questions, and Anas will field those to me at the end of the presentation. So let's start with our first question. Why does Knight-Hennessy Scholars exist? Our vision is to cultivate a growing global community of visionary, courageous, and collaborative leaders who are committed to positive change in the world. The way that we do this at Knight-Hennessy is by selecting and supporting a multicultural and multidisciplinary cohort of scholars and prepare them for leadership roles in academia, industry, governments, nonprofits, and the community at large. The program was founded by a man named John Hennessy in 2016. He was Stanford University's 10th president. He recognized the need for greater leadership across a variety of sectors and created a graduate level scholarship to help address this systemic issue. Now, John, by his training, was a computer scientist. He was an engineer, and he turned to a friend through the School of Business. This man graduated from the class of 62 from the Stanford Graduate Business School. He was an American businessman, a philanthropist, most famously known as being the co-founder of the brand, a small brand named Nike, hence the name the Knight-Hennessy Scholars. So each year we'll select up to 100 students each year. We'll fund up to 3 years of their education. We'll put them in experience that will make them the best leaders on the planet, and we will support them throughout their lives in solving those global challenges. And so we want you, again, to deepen your understanding of the world through the broad exposure of all these different backgrounds and experiences, because inherently problems are multidisciplinary, multicultural, that sometimes in order to solve the problems of what you're working on, you have to leave that sector. And so we saw this big gap, John saw this big gap of leaders across industries of academia, industry, governments, nonprofits that weren't talking to each other. So you simulate the skill set of being able to work with people who are very different than you. We're intentional with how we define and cultivate our leadership ethos. Here is our leadership development program, and we have 3 goals in the yellow circles. So number 1, broaden your multicultural perspective. Hopefully it's obvious to you all that leading in the 21st century requires more than just your own cultural perspective. Number 2, we want to prepare you to drive meaningful results. We all have examples of leaders who do and say different, who say and do different, rather. And so we want to make sure we create programming that aligns a lot of those behaviors that we see in the green circle. And that's the behaviors that we try to cultivate and design our programming around. And then, of course, we also want to deepen your commitment to the greater good. And so we want to make sure that whatever you work on, as an engineer, as an economist, as an educator, that those are all connected to something much bigger than you. And it's that kind of coordination and that collaboration that's going to make a difference in these challenges that are inherently multidisciplinary and multicultural. In the blue circle are the 9 traits that we look for. So when people ask, what are you looking for? Those are the things that we're looking for. And so we'll revisit that during the admissions process, but we try to reinforce those traits in the community along with our 6 behaviors and our 3 goals that we designed. This is the backbone of our programming. The name for this model is called the King Global Leadership Program, and it's a cadence of lectures, workshops, projects, experiences, all designed to reinforce everything that you see on the slide. The leadership program will supplement your graduate studies at Stanford. It's a complement so that in addition to deepening your domain expertise in your area of focus, you will get broad exposure to other ways of thinking, other ways of knowing, other ways of learning. We are not a degree granting component at the university. So all of our scholars are also apply and are admitted to a Stanford graduate degree program, which again will deepen your domain expertise in your chosen field of study. And we will build on that by giving you the opportunity to learn and grow alongside a group of scholars who represent a broad range of disciplines and cultures. So let me now paint the picture and illustrate a little bit about what our community looks like as of now. So our first class of scholars started in 2018 at 51 scholars. Our most recent class that's starting this Saturday is 89 scholars. And so in total, we selected 514 scholars to date. They represent over 75 different countries of citizenship. 45% hold a non-US passport. 17% are first in their family to go to college, and they represent over 170 different institutions worldwide. And we're always looking to expand to new disciplines and new places of where they study and where they call home. And so you could be the first of wherever you're coming from. In addition to our multicultural community, we're also quite multidisciplinary. So you can see the representation on the left-hand side in the bar chart of where students are obtaining their degrees. Those don't indicate percentages of preference or quotas because we don't have any. They are actually a reflection of enrollment size. So our largest school is humanities and science. Our smallest are sustainability and education. And so you can see a little bit about where people are in what they're studying. We currently represent 96 different degree programs of the 125 plus that are at Stanford. So we're always looking for people to study in areas that we don't yet have. And in the pie chart, you can see that 45% of our scholars are pursuing a professional degree in medicine, business, or law, 39% a PhD doctoral program, and 34% pursuing a master's degree. For the human calculators on the call, that's more than 100% because some of our scholars do dual and joint degrees. So they're doing a JD in law plus a master's in sustainability, or an MBA in business plus a master's in education. So please take a look at some of those dual and joint degrees that are offered at Stanford because we are quite an interdisciplinary campus altogether. Okay, so that's a little bit about our multidisciplinary community. So again, multicultural, multidisciplinary. What is it that we do when we come together? So on this slide are the requirements of what you need to do in order to meet the requirements of being a Knight-Hennessy Scholar. So this is all the stuff that's on top of your already difficult grad school. So hopefully you'll get a sense of how scholars spend their time with us. So at Stanford, we are divided into 3 academic terms. And so we have a fall, winter, and spring quarter. Each of those is 10 weeks of instruction plus a week of finals and then a transition in between. And so each of those quarters are led by a town hall. It's a chance to gather the entire Knight-Hennessy community. Even though your class is up to 100 students, you have students who are ahead of you, and you also have students who are coming up behind you. So actively, you have over 300 active Knight-Hennessy scholars who are on campus at the same time. So that means a broader exposure to different disciplines and cultures throughout your time as a graduate student. For 1 to 2 hours per week, we require our scholars to come to the program building and participate in a storytelling workshop. So you might feel some kind of tension already inside you. It's like, well, what's the big deal about storytelling? Well, for us, storytelling is a leadership skill set. Imagine a world where you're having to take your very complex research and make it digestible to someone who you know, for example, your grandmother. That is storytelling. Imagine a world where you see 2 people debating opposite sides of a viewpoint, and in order to move the project forward, you have to bring them together to see common ground. That is also storytelling. And imagine a place where you'll have to convince someone to abandon what they know, to try something new, to be brave and be courageous in picking up that new service, that new technology, that new way of being. That is also storytelling. And so because of that, we put you in the 1 to 2 hour week workshop of storytelling. You work with these 2 friendly faces, that's Stan Klein and Lisa Rowland, and their job is to help you become a better storyteller. So they are trained improvisational actors. They come from our theater and performance studies department at Stanford, and they take whatever you're presenting and help you with structure, delivery, influence in the way that you hold your body so that you can be more convincing, so that you're ready for the next TED Talk, spotlight, or podium that you'll be standing on. Halfway through the term, we also have a McMurtry Leadership Lecture Series where we hear from seasoned leaders about their life and their life's work. We've had these leaders come from a broad range of backgrounds, including philanthropist Melinda Gates, author of the book Caste, Isabel Wilkerson, economist Raj Chetty, Frances Arnold, who is a Nobel Prize winning chemist, Malala Yousafzai, who is also a Nobel Prize winner. We've had Michelle Bachelet, former president of Chile, Ellen Ochoa, astronaut. We've had James Manyika. He was a vice president at Google working on artificial intelligence. US Vice President Al Gore talk about climate crisis. And for the basketball fans, we also had LeBron James, who came to talk about education. And then finally, your final requirement throughout the year is also a quarterly retreat. So we do require our scholars at least 1 weekend per year participate in a quarterly retreat. That quarterly retreat has a bit of light programming where you'll learn more about leadership and have discussions with your fellow peers. But the majority of the programming will take the form of bonfires, karaoke nights, hiking out in nature. So we take a group of 60 to 80 scholars, we drop them either into the California coast, in the Santa Cruz Mountains, or in the Sierra Nevada. And then you're able to build those relationships that will last a lifetime at one of those quarterly retreats. So hopefully you feel like this threshold of your requirements for Knight-Hennessy is one that is palatable, and if anything, it will help add rejuvenation to your journey as a graduate student. And so we hope that the convenings, the storytelling practice, the exposure to different perspectives, as well as the bonding is going to be important glue as you continue to navigate your careers and solve the most pressing challenges of our time. Now, we throw a bunch of optional stuff at you as well. Curiosity Corner is a chance to learn from different leaders and professors across different campuses or across different grad schools. We have a theme that drives the programming every single quarter, and this upcoming quarter is different models of leadership. So we have different folks like our award-winning basketball coach, Tara Vanderveer, coming in to speak to our scholars. We also have the new president of Stanford, John Levin, to also talk to our scholars, and we have many different leaders across campus who are going to help cultivate a theme and thinking around that. Keystone Projects is a pitch competition. So if you have a big, bold idea of wanting to work, and those who are social entrepreneurs or working in social impact, this has your name all over it. So in the fall, scholars will gather up in a room. They'll all say, here's a big, bold idea that I'm working on. Perhaps you're trying to work on an app that increases the reading levels of rural communities in your home country. Then you can call out to different members of your scholar community and say, hey, I need someone who can code, who can help me build this app. I need a curriculum designer from the ed school who can help me with making sure that I can make a 6-week plan that is airtight. And then perhaps you can say, for anyone who is a graphic designer who ends up being an engineer or design major, then you can help them with making the design so that it looks really attractive. We give you funding and a mentor throughout the year. That funding will increase every year that you host your project, and then over time you're able to compete for a grant called the Global Impact Fund, which gives you enough funding to launch your own nonprofit. And then our final optional component is the global travel study. So in order to go see in order to change the world, you got to go see it. And so we take groups of 20 scholars to different countries around the world, where you're able to be led in a faculty by a faculty of Stanford in a particular area of focus. And so we've looked at environment in Norway, water access in Jordan, post-apartheid in South Africa, modernity in Turkey, and we have upcoming trips that are coming in this year. Later on at the end, we'll do the India trip repeated, as well as we have a South Africa trip and also Japan. That's going to be in June of next year. So that'll be our newest one. And you'll get to go on one of these trips that is funded by the program, one of those during your time as a Knight-Hennessy Scholar. All right, so the number of programs that we host doubles when we invite our scholars to be part of the design. And so we have a lot of community and scholar-driven events. Community events include a fall concert, storytelling nights, as well as a graduation ceremony. We know that the currency for graduate students is free food, so you can expect food at every single program that I've mentioned. In addition to that, we also host lunch at our building Monday through Thursday. We also invite scholars to practice their leadership by joining various scholar boards. So we have a finance committee, an art committee, a DEI committee that help cultivate the culture at Knight-Hennessy. And we also have the opportunity for scholar-driven events. So if you have an idea, you want to deepen our understanding about a particular topic, then you can also get some funding that is approved by your peers to host different events. And these can shape the culture, but they can also shape and sharpen our understanding of a topic that is important to you. I hope by now you're really excited about what we offer as part of our program. Again, as a reminder, this is in addition to these classes, the research, and all the things that you're doing at Stanford. And we hope that these kinds of pieces of programming allow you to be the best leader that you can possibly be. All right. So where does all this happen? On the left is Denning House, which is the home of Knight-Hennessy Scholars, but it's actually not a residence, so no one lives in the building. But it is our convening space and where the team works. And so it becomes one of the pieces of a scholar's journey to call that place home. And so you can see the beautiful sculpture up front, that we have a strong relationship with arts and sciences. We recognize that the role that the arts play in leadership and shaping society. And so we bring in many featured artists to come talk about their role and what shapes informs their work to deepen that understanding within the program. Now, Denning House, of course, is located on the campus of Stanford University, where it's a great place to be a graduate student. We have 17,000 students in total, with 9,000, a majority of them being graduate students. And so, in addition to cutting edge academics, there's also the opportunity to participate in one of our 50 different research centers. Our most recent that we just announced was a biodesign research center for wearables. So if you have any kind of wearables, then we have now a center that's dedicated to that. But there are also a range of different research centers: economic policy lab, immigration policy lab, the Center for Human-Centered Artificial Intelligence. So take a look, do an internet search of Stanford Research Centers, and you might find something that is aligned to you. And so in addition to your classes and being a scholar, some of our fellows still do some of these research centers, and so you can get involved in those. And in addition to that, we're also a great place for arts and culture. We're also a great place for athletics. If Stanford was its own country, we would be placed 11th in the world for Olympic medals in the Paris Games, and so that signals a little bit about how the prowess of athletics is at Stanford. And of course, Stanford is located in California, south of San Francisco, about 40 minutes in the heart of Silicon Valley. And in fact, it was our placement in Silicon Valley that allowed Silicon Valley to emerge as the global innovation hub, because a lot of the talent of coming from Stanford went right into Silicon Valley. So they're on campus and in the area, there's a rich blend of comfort with ambiguity, a bias towards action, and in a belief and of optimism that anything is possible. So speaking of possible, how do we make all this possible? With the founding donation of Phil Knight and our team of donors, we are the largest fully endowed graduate fellowship in the world. And so that allows us the immense privilege of being able to select students from a broad range of backgrounds and experiences and give them equal access to funding, programming, and our physical space. As being a Knight-Hennessy Scholar, what comes with that is up to 3 years of funding for your education. If your program exceeds those 3 years, then your hosting department will help explore funding options. Usually for PhDs, that means they pay the remainder of it. But most programs at Stanford will be 3 years or less. So if those 3 years, what we cover is a graduate school tuition and fees. You also get a stipend for living expenses on or off campus. We have a travel grant to go home once per year. Your parents will be proud of that. We'll be excited to hear that. And then we also have a relocation and technology stipend to offset the costs of coming to Stanford in the first year. And in the second and third year, we have academic enrichment funds that help you with attending conferences, summits, and doing summer research, for example. I hope it's abundantly clear that the value add of Knight-Hennessy is more than what's just on this slide. Through the programming, through the community, that the architects of the program that believed in order for you to solve the most pressing and important challenges of your time, we have to pull out these financial barriers. So it does mean that you don't have to be a teaching assistant, a TA, for so much, that you can then really focus on what you're doing. It also means that you don't have to go into corporate law, that you can go into public service. It also means that you don't have to compromise your research, because your funder is going to have certain preferences of what the research looks like. And so because of all of that, it means that you're able to invest so much into your time, into the problems that you're, so much time into the problems that you're working on, into your own development, and into each other. And so that is our hope, that in order to be able to work on these biggest problems of the world, that you're going to work alongside your fellow cohort. All right, so I talked a lot about why we exist, who we are, what we do, where and how we do it. My final question left to answer before we jump over to Q&A is how to join us. So let me speak now about our admission process. And like I said at the very beginning, I'm inviting a posture of patience and curiosity, because for international students, we all know that it takes a lot of time, energy, and investment in making sure that you have the best possible application to Stanford. I know this is a shiny program. I know there's lots of cool things, but make sure that you take a moment to pause and understand, when is the best time for me to be a graduate student at Stanford University, because that drives our process. So in terms of eligibility, we look for we're open to residents of all countries. We have no quotas, restrictions, or targets based on where you call home. However, in order to be read and reviewed by the Knight-Hennessy Scholars team, you must meet two baseline eligibility requirements. Number one, you must apply and be admitted to a Stanford graduate degree program. Most of our applicants will apply concurrently, so they'll apply to Stanford and the scholarship at the same time. And there are a few select that will apply after they get into Stanford, that maybe they are able to defer their admission to Stanford and then apply to the scholarship. Perhaps they start at Stanford in one master's and they want to fund the PhD or an MBA, a new degree, then they're also able to be eligible for Knight-Hennessy. And then we've added a new pathway that if you are joining as a first-year PhD at Stanford, you're also eligible to apply in your first year so that your second through fourth years are funded. Where to find all those different pathways is on our website. So go to kh.stanford.edu, type in eligibility, and we have 4 outlaid pathways that you can be eligible to apply to the program and be considered. The second of our eligibility requirements is that you must have graduated within the last 7 years. And so whatever your graduation year is, plus 7, and that's your window of eligibility for this current cycle. That means that you must have graduated in 2018 or later. But the way to think about it is, again, when do you graduate with your bachelor's, plus 7, and that's your window of eligibility. That's what it takes for us to read your application, that you're applying, that you have an active admission to Stanford or a deferred admission to Stanford, and that you've graduated within the last 7 years. Now, the things that the program, the readers, the admissions committee are looking for are these 3 themes, our 3 criteria: independence of thought, purposeful leadership, and civic mindset. So let me take some time to unpack what we mean by this. And this is where you'll go back to our website, you'll type in criteria, and then you'll see what things that we're looking for. So in terms of our evaluation criteria, first is independence of thought. We seek visionary thinkers who are curious, open-minded, analytical, eager for cross-cultural perspective, and genuinely excited to boldly and creatively address our world's important challenges. And so in this dimension, we're looking for your intellectual and academic vitality. How do you look at experiments that lead to other experiments? How do you think about translating different ways, models from one discipline to another discipline? How do you show the capacity to change your mind when you're able to see data that refutes what you already know? And so this dimension is really about how are you using your degree program and your experience to solve the problems that you really care about. The next of our criteria is purposeful leadership. We see courageous leaders who are ethical, decisive, resilient, driven to achieve meaningful results, and motivated to inspire others to effect positive change at scale. And this is the dimension where we're looking for behaviors that align to your values, behaviors that show that you're not just getting a title, but you're actually doing something with that title. So it's actions over accolades. This is where we like to see how you're shaping people around you. Maybe you're training the next generation of leaders of that student org that you're a part of. How are you shaping policies? Maybe you put in a new policy at work that prevents burnout because it takes into account mental health awareness. And maybe you're also creating new initiatives, new projects that are serving a bigger group of people, that you've created a program that is going to help others in their advancement or their access to clean water, for example. So purposeful leadership is about what you're doing. So we're really wanting to see evidence that you're not just showing, again, accolades and awards and these kinds of things. Those are byproducts of you actually doing the work. So we really want to get a sense that you're actually putting some action behind what you're doing. And finally, the third of our criteria is civic mindset. We seek collaborative community members who are humble, empathetic, trustworthy, oriented to act in the service of others, and deeply passionate about contributing to the greater good. And this is where we want to see evidence of how you're using humility and empathy to be able to navigate the world. How do you have an orientation towards wanting to serve others? Um, this is like evidence by understanding you think about the people most affected by the problems that you're working on. Sure, traffic is an inconvenience for all of us, but at the same time, who is it hurting the most because of these barriers? We also want to see evidence that you're thinking about which perspectives are missing. How do you invite other people who have different viewpoints than you? How do you work with the people who are your biggest resistance, who disagree with you? And so this is all speaking to that civic mindset piece where there's something much bigger than yourself. So this is the trifecta of what we're looking for. What you'll notice is that there's no TOEFL cutoff there. There's no GPA. These are pieces that build on top of what we're looking for. This will be different, the criteria for your grad program. And so you want to make sure that you're exploring, be one of 2 minds, that I want to make sure that I'm the most competitive graduate student, and then also what makes me a competitive Knight-Hennessy. And the number one reason why we can't look at someone for the scholarship is because they don't get into grad school at Stanford. And so you want to make sure that you are working to research, to explore, to have conversations about what it takes to get into that grad program, because if you're not competitive and viable for the department that you're applying for, then we can't see your application later on. So let me go ahead and contrast the different processes. So Starting with the left-hand side is the Knight-Hennessy Scholars application of the timeline. So I'm going to do a contrast between the two different timelines. Remember, you must have two applications, one to your Stanford degree program and one to Knight-Hennessy. So starting on the left-hand side, the application for Knight-Hennessy opens every June, so on June 1st, and it'll be due in mid-October. This year, the deadline is October 9th to start in September 2025. And so the weeks and months, and we're about 20 days now until the deadline, you have to prepare 5 components of the KHS application. So for us, that includes an online application, a one-page resume, a set of transcripts and test results that mirror the department that you're applying to, a set of short answers, an essay, and 2 reference letters. So you'll think all that thinking that you have about the 3 criteria, you'll put those into these 5 components of the application. Now, concurrently, but separately, you'll also be applying to a Stanford degree program, and that's where it gets a little bit wonderfully sophisticated. So depending on which program that you apply to, for example, if you are interested in business, you'll apply in round 1, and that deadline's in September. For those who are applying to the School of Medicine, it'll be in October. School of Education is typically by the end of November, and then law, engineering, and most of the programs by December. So it's essential to check when you're applying to Knight-Hennessy that you know what is your degree department deadline for KH applicants, and also the October 9th deadline or the mid-October deadline for KHS, and make sure that you submit by the respective deadlines. You don't have to submit them together, but you have to make sure you hit each of those respective deadlines. And here's a tip: if you apply to if you apply to Stanford and if you apply by your respective deadline, you're a competitive applicant because of many, more than we would like. Students who don't apply to Stanford and don't make the deadline are automatically deemed ineligible because they have not followed instructions. So even just by following those 2 simple instructions, you are a competitive applicant. That said, there is still stuff to get to be competitive. So let me do a little bit of contrast in addition to the timeline. So our online application is free. It is not free to apply to graduate school in the United States. And so you have to make sure that you save, you find waivers where possible, and plan accordingly to make sure that you meet those costs. Our resume is 1 page. They might ask for a multi-page CV. Our resume is an intentional invitation to distill what you've done into the lens of the 3 criteria. One of the biggest mistakes that I see applicants make is that they don't think about flavoring their resume differently. They submit the same one that they've been building over the course of their career and say, there's my resume. But it's really important to make sure that you align that resume to our criteria, to the bullet points that you see on our website. Transcripts and test results might be the only thing that's identical across the 2. Of course, we need those in English with any kind of translation. We need those in English. You can also use a self-reported form if you need via our application. Your department will also have its own preference of how they prefer their transcripts. So make sure that you have them in order to be eligible, that you submit whatever pieces that they need for their transcripts and test results. Again, we will mirror whatever they require. So if they require a TOEFL, then we will also require that as well. The short answers and essays are very different, so make sure you answer the questions. If you go to our prompts, I think you'll see that they are very different. They're designed to be different. We design our applications so that you get to learn more about yourself and we get to learn more about you. And then finally, on the reference letters, we were asked for 2. They might ask for 3 or more. And so make sure that you're asking people who most can identify with the criteria that you're putting forward. Now, when it comes down to the reference letters, you may choose the same person to write your degree program letter as well as for Knight-Hennessy, but you want to make sure that you ensure that they tailor their letter to fit your application. Here's also another challenge or mistake that I see a lot of applicants make is that they don't talk to the reference letters on how the criteria for Knight-Hennessy is different than the degree program. So we get a generic letter that says, here's how they're fit for the program, but it really has to focus on how is it different to fit the criteria of independence of thought, purposeful leadership, and civic mindset. So that's a little bit about how to prepare to apply. And like I said, make sure that you're asking, when am I going to be the most competitive for for Stanford? Because Knight-Hennessy is only going to move you forward if you're competitive for your department. So it's really important to make sure you're of 2 minds, making sure that you're competitive for the degree program and competitive for the scholarship. Now, what happens? This all happens by the end of December. So in December, we then verify that you did indeed apply to Stanford. And if you didn't, you are removed from consideration, disqualified essentially. And so make sure that you have an application to Stanford. From that group of eligible applicants who meet the deadline, we then will recommend 500 to move forward in the process who most strongly represent our 3 evaluation criteria. So in January, we'll invite those 500 to submit an optional, required video statement. The video statement is an additional component that is added to your file that helps us better understand the person behind the application. And the prompt for that video is teach something to your fellow scholars. We don't judge it based on content or production value. We're asking, can you tell a story? And so you can choose anything that makes you excited. So we've had lots of cooking videos. We've had dance move videos. We've had fun party trick videos teaching us a little bit about their identity and experiences. But we gather that video for those who are within that 500 group. From that group and also with department feedback, we then will select 180 applicants who that we call finalists. Those 180 will be invited into a 2-part experience. Part 1 is doing an individual recorded video interview via Zoom, and that's done in your own time zone. And then the second component is an on-campus event called Immersion Weekend, where we fund your experience to come to Stanford. You'll do a preview of the programming, you'll meet other finalists, and then you'll also participate in a group interview evaluation during that time. From that group of 180, we then have the very difficult decision to then make a 100-person shortlist. At the same time, we're waiting for your department status. And so if you apply to the MBA, you'd know in December if you're moving forward or not. But all other programs will get back to you between January and March. And so some people end up going to Immersion Weekend who are still waiting for admission offer, while most people will already know that they've been admitted to the campus. And then the process is convened later on in May. So if you get admitted to Stanford and you're on your short list, then you are named a Knight-Hennessy Scholar in May. So that's the process that we've refined over the course of the 7 years that we've been around. And so this is something to expect when you're thinking about applying to Knight-Hennessy. And so again, like I said, a posture of curiosity and patience so that you're asking, is this going to be the year where I'm the most competitive graduate student for Stanford? And then that's the year that you also ought to apply to Knight-Hennessy. All right. With that, it's been a pleasure being able to introduce the program to you. And so I wanted to end with a few final thoughts. John, at the outset of this program, wanted to create something that was new and enduring, that would give access to the world's brightest minds and kindest hearts, the chance to be able to make the biggest impact possible. And that's our hope for you, that we hope that you're looking for something that is unlike anything else, that is enduring. We hope that you want to have access to the world's brightest minds and kindest hearts, including your own. And we hope that you want to make the biggest impact possible in solving global challenges. So this is the 2023 class. It was taken a year ago on the first day of school. You can tell it was the first day of school because everyone's smiling. No one looks like that anymore. Graduate school is hard. And so it's one of those things that you need a community, you need a group that'll help you get across the finish line. And so, like I said, if you are one who knows that you require the perspectives of others to make the biggest impact in what you're working on, then I invite you to please consider joining us at Stanford. One of the things that I'm often asked about in my role is this worth my time? I won't sugarcoat that getting into Stanford is hard, but also getting into Knight-Hennessy is also challenging. And I got a lot of students who ask me, is this worth my time? And so my response to that question is your story worth telling? And I hope that it is, and I hope I'm lucky enough to receive it here at Knight-Hennessy. And with that, Anas, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you so much. We'll go and jump into some Q&A now.
Okay, thank you so much, Christian, for such a detailed presentation. I think we do have a few questions. I will just take a moment to filter through some of the questions and comments we received. Just a second. Okay, perfect. So our first question is, somebody was wondering, what about students who are graduating this year or next year in their spring semester? Are they still eligible to apply, provided they graduate before actually enrolling?
Yes, you are eligible to apply, and for us, we're officially neutral when it comes down to how much time you spent out of undergrad. So it doesn't matter if you're right away from undergrad. So some people apply in their essentially at the beginning of their senior year or their final year of schooling. But then the question is, are you a competitive graduate student? And so that's where I think you really need to do the research to check. There are some programs like business or education where applying right out of undergrad is not going to happen because they value work experience. There are some other programs that can take you right away, that you go from one lab, your undergraduate lab, into your new lab. And so it really depends on the program. I will say pause to say, what is it that that department that I'm looking for is seeking? Certainly, there is a difference in applying to a master's to a PhD level. So if you need the work experience, the research experience, etc., this is on you all to be able to explore what that program is looking for in particular. So what I see many times is a lot of international students, or at least students, I mean, this is actually broadly across every pool, that they are applying right away because they're not sure. They want to apply to grad school to explore these ideas, to explore these concepts, but that doesn't always take hold. So that's why you really have to ask what's going to be competitive for the department that I am applying for. But yes, you can apply right away if you'd like. Just make sure that you're competitive for Stanford.
Thank you for answering. Another frequently asked question that we get all the time related to this particular program is that quite a lot of students usually wonder if students from diverse and often unrepresented backgrounds and areas with, not a lot of opportunities, academic and professional opportunities, how can they sort of approach the whole application process and just the whole program? I mean, how can they sort of feel supported and included in the whole program?
So we take a good deal of looking at someone in context. So we do recognize the difference of the kind of school environment they're part of. So make sure that you are capturing that accordingly in your files. Um, at the same time, you don't need to have a club or a title in order to show us that you're doing stuff. And so you really have to focus on, again, going back to the criteria of like, how are you showing evidence of purposeful leadership, even in an environment that doesn't have 1,000 clubs at your university? So like, show us the action of your purposeful leadership and make sure that your rec letter also comments on that. So it's really about looking at the power of the pattern of what you're working on that's going to make it most attractive for the reading committees. If you go to the criteria section of our website, we have bullet points that are under each of the different criteria section. Those bullet points translate into a rubric that our readers are looking at. And so that rubric that the readers will assess an application against. And so if there's not evidence of you being generating new ideas and being open to other perspectives, which I think are bullet points underneath those criteria buckets, then we are not able to feel, yeah, that this is a great Knight-Hennessy scholar. So it is about making sure that you are showing the combination of that criteria, irrespective of what these opportunities look like. So really focusing on your family, your community, a workplace. That it's not enough to just say, this is where I'm limited. It's you have to say, this is where I'm limited, and this is what I'm doing on top of being limited. That really makes a difference. So yes, diversity continues to be one of those top mind things that inspire the campus. And we're excited by people who come from places that are new and different, but it's not enough to just say that these are things where I was limited, because we want to see what you're doing within that limitation. And on top of that, we like to see students who do extend beyond their school context, beyond their own worlds. Maybe they really work hard to participate in international opportunities. They get internships. They're doing the most with what they're available to them. So yes, paint the picture of what those limitations are, but then also show us how you're exceeding those limitations.
Thanks for such a comprehensive answer. And so we have another really interesting comment slash question. So this person is saying, from what I understand, the Knight-Hennessy program really values in multidisciplinary approaches and cross-sector collaboration. Could you share examples of how recent scholars have leveraged their diverse backgrounds to tackle complex global challenges?
Yeah, so firstly, we are a 7-year program, so we don't have anyone who's a CEO or head of state yet, and so that is the work. I'm actually thinking about, so we have the Center for, the Institute for Human-Centered Artificial Intelligence, where we have a bioengineering student, a stats student, and I believe the other, a business student, who are working on different implementation of technologies and kind of understanding the work through HAI is the name of the institute. They bring different perspectives together. And so it's really looking at a problem, for example, like housing, and how do business and statistics and bioengineering play a role into the bigger system. And that's, I think, what we're really focusing on, is how do you look at problems not just as individual cases, but what are some of the systems that are in play that are doing that. Now, they're still currently enrolled PhD student. Well, one that I'm thinking about is a currently enrolled PhD student. So of course, there's limitations to working on their own dissertation work and their defense. MBA is also working in mid-level jobs so that they're trying to build those skills simultaneously. And so that's the big zoom at, is that we're actually still quite a young program. We're a 7-year-old kind of exploring the world, that there's still a lot of runway for us, but we have some early indicators that they're actually working towards each other. It's when you bring together the different perspective. I think a session or two ago, I talked to scholars who would not. One of my favorite questions to ask them is, who's someone you would have not have met if it wasn't for Knight-Hennessy? And so I think about someone who studies a master's in international policy, rooming with someone who is a master's in aerospace and astronomical sciences, and they come together and they have very different orientations to seeing the world, very different cultural backgrounds. He's Korean and his fellow student roommate is an American, and they are still working towards trying to think about how are we going to make sure that everyone has access to these different services and food. So it's something that is, I think, quite spectacular to be able to be exposed to these different perspectives. Even when I reflect on my own graduate school training, it would be beneficial to think about education through the lens of economics or engineering, because again, solving challenges does not have to be from your own cultural and disciplinary lens, and that's part of the mission of what we're trying to do.
Thank you. And another really popular question seems to be that, can students submit a letter of English proficiency instead of giving tests like IELTS or TOEFL? I think this is especially important for those students that find it really difficult to actually afford the IELTS or the TOEFL test. Especially in Pakistan, we do get a lot of questions related to that. So is that something that's possible?
So we mirror the practices of your grad program. So if your grad program allows for an English waiver based on a letter, then we will also allow that for Knight-Hennessy. The reality is that you do have to prove that, provide documentation to the department, and then you'd write that in your application that the department does not require a TOEFL test from me. So we, again, honor those practices. We are not the people to admit you to Stanford. So we cannot make a call on your English proficiency. And so that has to be through the departments that you're applying to.
Perfect. And another question is, so are students who are admitted to the program allowed to bring in their dependents?
So yeah, Stanford does have several pathways to which students can bring a partner or a dependent. So we have, for example, several mothers that are joining this next class. We also have married partners. There are, of course, some support for being able to have them, but then that is separate from any kind of sponsorship because you are a student, so you are able to be there. And we do have some funds that support that. So please look at the residence and dining website for Stanford to see what there are for families who are attending Stanford. So I know of one of our Chilean scholars who won the Global Impact Fund to start a nonprofit, had that nonprofit was themed in supporting young mothers in their first 100 days. It was like an AI and also community building platform where they can get advice and support. And he also happened to be raising his 2 young children through his MBA and his MPP program. So it is doable to have your family there. Of course, there's preparation. Of course, there's questions, but we do have those supports in place.
So we have another question. So if we have been to the US before through a scholarship or an exchange program or a degree program, is this going to decrease their chances of getting the scholarship?
Nope, we have no preferences, quotas, or targets based on your previous background. We look at students again, through the lens of what's competitive for the department. So those experiences are in the spirit of our mission, which is multicultural. And so hopefully you use those as pieces of evidence in your file for what makes you a competitive applicant to the discipline that you're trying to be a part of. So there's no weighting system on previous experiences there. Even if you have a master's, we have several people which come in with other degree programs. The way to think about it is that your degree is a skill set to solve a problem. So if you don't know what that problem is that you're working on, then it's hard to reverse engineer why the Knight-Hennessy and why the scholarship program. So really start with that. One of our highlights is a podcast that we have, and our students talk about whatever is the big problem that they're working towards. And so you really want to be visionary and saying, this is what I'm wanting to work on, and this is how Stanford and Knight-Hennessy will help me get there. So yeah, really give some thought to, am I really focusing on something that is informed by my studies, my career, my lived experience, and make sure that you are trying to figure out what that problem set is that you're working on. That's what helps compel us to thinking not only that you're visionary, but you've already been doing something towards that vision. That's what's going to be most compelling to our reading committees.
Okay, and we have a few questions related to the short answers that you just discussed. So, somebody is saying, how can we sort of approach the improbable facts supplemental answer? What do they need to talk about while they're attempting that particular question?
Yeah, so the application was designed to be unlike any other application that you've applied to. So I hope that's actually the case. I'll go ahead and advance actually the slide a little bit because we do have a lot of resources that are available. We're going towards the tail end of our application season. So we have maybe a dozen events that are online, which include an application workshop where we screen share the application and go through each of the different tabs of the application, and we talk to what our readers are trained to look for. We also have Q&A on Zoom, just like we're doing right now, where you can talk to admission team members and other scholars, so get different perspectives around that. To answer your question about improbable facts, we have a podcast. It's called Imagine a World. You can find this in the news section of our website. But each episode talks about their problem statement, the world that they're born into, and the last 10 to 15 minutes is dedicated to application material, which includes them sharing an improbable fact. And so these improbable facts are ways to tell stories that get layers about you that aren't already captured within the work. So it's things that you have idiosyncrasies, things that you make you uniquely you. And so we don't use any kind of the criteria is looking across all the entire application, not just those individual bullet points. So we do see layers of ways in which they straddle two different cultures, or they straddle different disciplines, or they've maybe gotten a fun experience or a fun award that was kind of in line with the three evaluation criteria. So we get a sprinkling. But the reality is that the bulk of an application's criteria is going to be in the letters, in your resume, in your application form. And so those short answers add another beautiful texture. It's like the dash of saffron on your favorite dish, your home cooked meal. It's just that little tiny ingredient that makes it uniquely a taste of home. So that's how you want to think about these improbable facts: is that they're not the bulk, they're sprinkles on a cupcake. They add color and texture to your humanity, but the bulk of it is going to be in the file. So hopefully and we say, have fun with this. What are things that people are surprised to learn about you that are unlikely but true? It's truth with a twist. So start with, what are 8 pieces of you that are very true? And then how do you bring in different layers of your life to make them improbable? But hopefully you have fun with those different pieces there.
Perfect. And somebody was wondering, so can you still submit your application if you're missing your letters of recommendation? Also, somebody was saying that can they submit different letters to the particular school that they're applying to and different letters to the program?
So to backtrack to the first question, yes, you can submit without letters there, but I would not recommend, because we're in a world where emergencies happen. So if you submit, you're not able to easily change your recommender. So once you get confirmation from your recommenders that they are going to submit by the October 9th deadline, then that could give you the runway to submit. But again, I think emergencies happen, so make sure that you at least confirm with them that they know that they're writing a letter rec for you and that they will submit by the October 9th deadline. But we've had many instances where people had to go back and forth with our team. And of course, the volume is a lot. And so then you get stuck in waiting mode, which of course is excruciating, knowing that whether or not you can update your rec letter contact there. So yes, you can submit even without those rec letters, as long as your rec letters are received in time. But we've seen many applicants who submit and the rec letters don't, they ghost them, and then they're not eligible because their application's incomplete. As far as writing different letters, yes, you ought to think about what's going to be most strategic to the KHS criteria versus the degree program, and make sure that you're submitting or you're nominating people who most strongly understand the 3 criteria. If that rec letter person, you can't have a conversation with them about the KHS criteria, ask somebody else, because you need them to align your letter to the 3 criteria. You need them to align to what you're saying are evidence of your criteria. If it's not going to happen, then you need to ask somebody else. So yeah, so that's we of course you can't have parents write for your letter of recommendation, but sometimes it's having whoever is the graduate assistant that is closest to you who knows your work is a better fit for the criteria versus the department chair. It's not about prowess or ranking that's going to be impressive. It's do they tell the story of your criteria? And so make sure that they're able to share some of that. So yes, some scholars have used the exact same set of writers for both letters, but they're tailored letters. And some scholars strategically used completely different sets of letters. I remember talking to a physics PhD where, yeah, my physics professor knows my work for the Stanford program, but they don't know what my civic mindset and my purposeful leadership looks like. So I needed to ask somebody else.
Perfect. Let's just take one last question. And unfortunately, we're almost out of time. So we'll just take one last question and then we'll end the webinar. So is there a certain level of professional experience the committee prefers for a strong application to the Knight-Hennessy Scholars Program? I've noticed that so this is just somebody saying. So I've noticed most graduate programs, for example, require a minimum of 2 years of professional experience. Is that the same case? Is that the case for the KHS program as well?
So again, we do not have a preference for how much work experience your degree program will. And if they don't like you, we can't look at you. And so that's the reality. That's the reality. We have many people who we want for Knight-Hennessy that our hearts are broken every single year because they're not able to get into the grad program. And it's because of their applicant pools and what they're looking for. So it's really important to flip and say, what is it? What makes me the most competitive graduate student at Stanford? And then also what makes me a competitive Knight-Hennessy scholar? Because again, we are working within a system at Stanford to be able to advance those who the departments are see as most competitive and viable. So thanks everyone for your questions. I know we weren't able to get to everyone's, but here's some contact information to leave off on. Please ask questions at khscholars@stanford.edu. You can visit our website. Again, we have a few online events that you can join if you have other remaining questions. I know a lot of what I covered is on the website, so make sure that you're reading, doing your homework, doing your research, and then also follow us on social. I think getting your eyes, ears, and heart wrapped around the culture at Knight-Hennessy is an important one. So when you get those pings from social media, that helps you with kind of thinking about the languaging, and then please visit the criteria section of our website. Those bullet points are the code that we look for. So we are quite transparent that is our rubric that you see on our website. And so please make sure that you're providing lots of evidence in that through the online form, the resume, your letters, essays, and of course your transcripts and test results too. So thank you so much, Anas, for this time. I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, sadly, we can't really take any more questions. Thank you so much, Christian, for taking out the time, for leading, and for such an informative and engaging session. It was definitely a pleasure listening to you. And I'm also certain that all of our participants found the information and techniques that you shared very insightful and useful. If you guys have any questions about today's session or any questions about US higher education in general, please reach out to not only the Knight-Hennessy programs, Scholars Program, excuse me, but also your Education USA advisor. If you have not already, please register for our free advising services by visiting our website, www.educationusa.pk. And also don't forget to keep following our EduSA social media pages to stay up to date on all of our events and happenings, and the USCFP social media pages for information on fully funded programs. And thank you very much, everyone, for joining and participating. Thank you so much, Christian, for leading this webinar. And I hope you have a good rest of your day. Thank you so much, everyone.